And welcome back to the ASI Connect studio. Now, we've got a couple of three great guests coming up right now to talk innovation and entrepreneurism. Now, motorsport has always been led by these two main areas, and Autosport International has traditionally, in Birmingham at the NEC, been able to showcase these great examples. Slightly different this year, of course, with the pandemic implications, but we've got three guests, like I say, who have all really been a part of different forms of sport, all within motorsport, really. And they've all been innovators, and they've all been, well, entrepreneurs as well, I think is the best way. So I'm going to introduce one by one, and then we'll go through full details. So first of all, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, next to me, Paolo Pinheiro. Nice to have you along, Paolo.
Hello, good morning. Nice to
Morning,
meet
Paolo.
you.
He's the CEO of the Autodrome Algarve, and a really, really big story around that one, really, about how a circuit became so high profile in Portugal after the last time the Grand Prix there was 1996. And we talk about Grand Prix. Our next two guests know all about the F1 world. We've got Roddy Basso in the middle there. Roddy, great to have you along.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And on the end, we also have Rob Smedley as well.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
It's a great panel that we've got lined up for you, I'm sure you'll agree. And what I'm going to do to start with, as we're talking about entrepreneurism, I think, is to get an idea really about each person's background. Not that you really need to know, because a lot of these names you'll be very familiar with. But Paolo, first of all, if you could just introduce us and tell us a bit about your background and then how you got into the project with a circuit in Portugal.
Okay, so I am a mechanical engineer, and I started to race go-karts when I was very young, 13 years old, with Pedro Lamy and Coceira and all the well-known Portuguese drivers at the time. Then when I started to work, I worked as a mechanical engineer in Volkswagen. Then I moved on to project managing construction. And then as part of that, I did a lot of development. And one of the challenges of my former boss was to do a different project just to housing and banks and whatever we were doing at the time. And a racetrack, because of my racing background, was for me a perfect challenge. And I thought, okay, the Algarve has the weather. I have the knowledge from all ways, from construction, from project managing, from everything. So it was quite a challenge to get the planning permissions and the funding and everything. And in Portugal, as you can imagine, it wasn't easy. But once we got, in 7 months, we managed to get everything built and ready to use. And by the way, I remember the first time we went here on track for a Formula 1 test with Rob and Philip Massa. He was his engineer in Ferrari, in Alfa Romeo, and it was quite interesting to do that lap with them here on track.
Yeah, I bet it was. Over your shoulder, you got pictures of bikes. Now, I know that's a bit of a passion for you, isn't it, as well, Paolo, because of the team as well within the Superstock bikes too. So, yeah, motorsport is at the heart of you, isn't it?
Yes, we had a team in Park Algarve. We had very high moments. We had the record of wins in Supersport class. We were twice second in the championship, and we have won all the 7 Portuguese championships that we have participated. So we have a quite good record in motorsport, and we've done that since 2004 up to now. So we believe that motorsport is a perfect tool for if you're doing something related with the car industry or bike industry, where you have to have a presence in motorsport. I think this is the way forward, being related with technology, being related with marketing, whatever. I think is, no matter what people say, motorsport, it's the pinnacle of industry, and we have always to be a part of it.
Now, if I move on to Rob, we come to you knowing full well who you are, more by your voice, really, I suppose, than anything else, when we think back to your Formula One days with Ferrari, Felipe Massa as well. So you come from this upper echelon, elite form of motorsport with Formula One. Just give us a teaser, really, as to your career and how you got to that point and how you leapt onto non-fuel modes of transport.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's a really long journey, to be honest, Bryn. It starts many years ago. You know, I kind of took the classic route through of, you know, finishing school, mechanical engineering degree, and then going on to work at the lower levels of motorsport. I did Formula 3, Formula 3000, touring cars, that type of thing. Very short period, though, I would say, before eventually, after about a year, 2 years, something like that, I started working on Grand Prix cars. So my first team was the Stewart Grand Prix back in the mid-late 90s, which has then subsequently transformed into what is now Red Bull nowadays. Then I went to work for Eddie Jordan, Jordan Grand Prix, and then from there I went to Ferrari. I had 12 years at Ferrari, and then eventually I went to Williams as the head of vehicle performance. So that was quite a wide-ranging role. And then decided at the end of 2017 really, but I stayed on for another year. I decided at the end of 2017 that I wanted to have some time away from the team environment, and then we worked towards my extrication for at the end of 2018. So at the end of 2018, then I then went on to have a little bit more time to myself and think about new projects.
Yeah, it's delicately put, isn't it, as well, your extrication? I like the way you did that. If we go to Roddy as well. Now, Roddy, I know that you and Rob worked actually together, didn't you, at Ferrari at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. We when Rob came to the team, I think I was already there in the test team, and this is where I started my career in Formula One. My education is based on aerospace engineering. I had an experience in USA at NASA about data intelligence on board of satellites, but then I was lucky enough to start to send resume in Ferrari, and they hired me in the test team, and so I think that there was a very lucky situation because I could immediately learn what the good looks like, and so after 6 seasons in Ferrari, I went to Red Bull because I wanted to have a look and see how you could work on the same kind of topic, which is the race car, from different perspectives. And I have to say there was an incredible experience, a lot of fun and a lot of learnings there. And then after 8 years in race engineers and going around the world for the races, I moved into business strategy and management. So in Magneti Marelli, I was sales and marketing director after a few years as an account manager, and I was following 2 business units, the Motorsport and the CTO business units, which was looking after concept car prototypes and everything that is on the border between motorsport and automotive, hypercars and all these sort of things. Then McLaren called me to lead the Motorsport business unit, and this is where I've been working up to 2019 with very good business successes and technical successes, including the Formula E battery, to mention one. Now I'm on a new journey, which is not anymore on wheels, but on water, and I'm leading as a CEO and co-founder the E1 series, that is the only full electric championship on powerboat.
Yes. Thank you. It gives an idea really of everyone's backgrounds here, and I think now really when we turn to entrepreneurism, we should really look at the different projects that each and every one of you have. I know, Rob, you talked about the Electroheads and Motorsport last year at ASI. I know, Roddy, you launched your series in September, so right in the middle of a pandemic. Rob, it must have been tricky for you as well, launching a series and then the pandemic taking over. So we'll come to that in just a few moments. But if I start really with Paolo, because you're nearest to me on the screen, why not? If we have a look at your particular project, this was something that was a brainchild of yours since early noughties, really, and then it came to fruition finally. But talk us through the project that you were a part of, the vision and how it all came to be. And if you could do that in 3 or 4 minutes, that would be lovely.
Yeah, well, when I started to race back in the early 80s in Portugal, we had one racetrack in Portugal that was Estoril, and one go-kart racetrack in Portugal. So whenever we wanted to race or to practice, we had to travel throughout the country. So it was very, very hard for us, especially being in the Algarve, that is in the low end of the country. And while I was driving with my father to do the races with the go-kart on top of the car, it was always during our conversations we said we should have a go-kart or a main racetrack in our region, because we have the weather, we have the hotels, we have everything. And this was something that, as I moved to superbikes when I was 18 years old, we kept on talking about this. And clearly, the weather is a crucial part of a racetrack in Southern Europe. It is one of the key aspects to have a good location is the weather. So once we started to work on the racetrack around 2000 in a more dedicated way, the key was to have a good weather. The second point that for us was very, very important was to have a very special racetrack. So we didn't want to have a blunt racetrack. We wanted to have a racetrack that was very challenging. that every rider, every engineer that or driver that came here said, okay, this is challenging for the cars, for the bikes, for the tires, for everything. And because it's so further away from everywhere in Europe that if it were just another racetrack, we would not succeed. So this was very, very important for us to do a different racetrack from all the others that were being done at the time. What people call the tilk racetracks, the normal racetrack. So we did, I think, and we managed to succeed, a very, very different racetracks from all the others. On top of this, we wanted to have a full complex. So we had the go-kart racetrack, the off-road park, the hotel, the apartments, and the technological park is still the last piece of the project that isn't built yet. So, and we did bit by bit. So finally, back in 2016, we managed to have everything completed with the exception of the technological part, because everything works together. And we have had some events, like the GLR event back in 2018, when they did the launch of the I-Pace car, where we had the off-road cars, the I-Pace cars, the racing cars, the hotel, the apartments, the off-road, everything being used at the same time. And it was a very, very nice vision to have all the equipment that we have being used at the same time for the full purpose that they were designed and built. And for instance, all the I-Pace cars we had 500 I-Pace Jaguars being charged with the use of solar panel systems that were charging the cars with electricity. And this is the way that we see the racetrack happening, a very forward project, carbon neutral, and that was purposely designed for this, for the next step, for the next generation that we have to accomplish in terms of engineering, in terms of motorsport, whatever. So because times are changing very rapidly, and what we did 10 years ago, 12 years ago, still is updated to what we have now. And when we had Formula One, it was maybe the most enjoying part of the process was to see that what we built so many years ago is still updated. So it was quite enjoyable on that side.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, Portugal's Grand Prix history is quite. It's had a fairly sketchy past, really. '96 was the last time there was a Grand Prix there. Both '97 and '98, it was due to host a Grand Prix, but it didn't happen. Then last year, it returned to Portugal at your circuit there. And for those who are watching right now, want to know why, in my mind, it was such a humongous event. It was because that's where Lewis Hamilton got that 90-second Grand Prix victory, taking the honour, really, from Michael Schumacher. If we move to Roddy and to Rob. Now, as Paolo was saying just there, he's talked about the future, carbon neutral, electric forms of racing and things. Rob, if I come to you first of all, because Electroheads Motorsport with the karting series, which I believe it was announced recently that you're looking to finish last year's season next month. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it at the top of the talk, Bryn, that you know, I think all three of us on here have you know suffered, as with everybody, have suffered with the global pandemic. We launched last year just before the pandemic hit, and then it was really difficult to, you know, it's been a really stop-start process. Which has been, you know, quite difficult to get around. Now what we did was we wanted to put on a, you know, our customers said that they wanted a winter championship, so we tried to deliver that last year. Unfortunately, after 3 rounds, we then had to stop, and we've stopped until now. So we're trying to finish that off before we start the 2021 summer championship. But I guess it's you know, listening to what Paolo was talking about there, it's a similar journey. You know, I mean, I wanted to do something which was a little bit more, had a bit more purpose. You know, after 25 years in the Formula One teams, it was something that kind of give back to the community. It was something that I wanted to be very much you know, pointed towards the grassroots. And I just see karting as a brilliant sport. It's a fantastic sport. It has lots of different, you know, educational elements to it. You know, not only, you know, if you want to take stuff like STEM education and that type of thing, of course, it's a brilliant way of teaching kids about STEM education, but other educational, you know, life educational elements to it. But the problem is, as has been the case, you know, for many years now, it's not accessible to everybody. So it was about increasing, you know, the diverse, having a more diverse and rich driver cohort, having a more meritocratic system, and the only way you're going to do that is by bringing parity which we're doing through the electric drivetrain, and by getting the costs down. So kind of what we offer is a fixed cost karting where families can kind of hopefully eventually compete at the top level, but with a fixed cost. That those costs shouldn't rise exponentially as they unfortunately do now. It's very expensive to go motor racing, so it's about trying to bring a level of affordability and accessibility, and with that trying to improve the diversity that we've got.
Yeah, Roddy, I'll come to you in just a second. But Rob, when you were looking at different opportunities, should we say, within motorsport and non-motorsport, I suppose, with an electric motor, it's still motorsport, but it's a completely different form. How did you identify, really, that karting was the niche that you were going to focus on?
Because I think, Bryn, that the point for me was there's a certain amount of there's an element, if you like, of altruism that it's something for me to try to give back to the community. But more than that, I've always been a massive advocate of STEM education. I've always been a massive advocate of getting more kids involved in motor racing. At present, I am a director of Formula One management, and I took on that role because it's again trying to build fan engagement. But if we want to get to the younger fans, if we want to get to Gen Z, and we want to somehow get them involved in motorsport and get them pointing towards the elite level of motorsport, I think for this generation, for Generation Z and the generations that will come after it, it's got to be experiential. It can't just be 2 hours of watching Formula One on a Sunday afternoon. So there's a gaming element to it, but there's also how do we get them on the track? And to get them on the track, we've got to be able to do that at something which is far more affordable than perhaps the current system. So it's about really building an ecosystem which works in harmony with the current system. This is not meant to take over anybody else's front garden, let's say, but it's definitely meant to grow the market, and that's why I chose karting, because I thought that karting is such a brilliant sport. But if we can build it out and we can build the market, and we're already seeing the green shoots of that, then it was something really worthwhile and really purposeful to get involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just to let you know, we have people tuning in right now we've got Hungary, Ireland, Brazil, so it really is a global reach at the moment, ASI Connect. And I think, Roddy, this is pertinent for you, because when we talk about world reach, the E1 World Powerboat Series, of which you're the CEO, you've headed up, and I had a look at the website on the lead up to this. I mean, those boats are just mind-blowingly cool. So if you want to check them out, I urge you to do so. But when it comes to a World Series, talk us a little bit about your project and where it fits in the current picture of motorsport on water.
Yes, sure. Well, first of all, this project has been born by two passions that I have. One is a personal passion, which is sailing and water. In particular, about sailing, I do enjoy the moment, the magic moment, as I call it, when you switch off the engines and you are out of the harbor and you can just go with the sails. I always thought, how can I bring this kind of emotion and feeling in order to let also Motonautic and the powerboats experience the nature in a more respectful and immersive way. On the other side, there is a professional passion, which is about sport and technology. And in my careers, as I mentioned earlier, I moved from the race engineering, and then I moved to business development and management. I've been in race teams, suppliers, and now I'm in a promoter role. And I still work around motor racing because I strongly believe in the potential in terms of technology and marketing platform, delivering important message and contribute, as Rob was saying, to something that is definitely bigger. And what is bigger than us is the sustainability goal number 14, dictated by the UN. So this is really what we are trying to address. Build a new sport that is coming from the merge of three technical culture, sailing, motonautic, and motorsport, in order to speed up the electrification process in the marine industry. And on the other side, of course, we want to speed up, as I say, the electrification process, because there is a lot to do in the marine industry. And in the future, I foresee the mobility as being only one chapter. There will be an hybrid way to move from a point A to point B. And so we have the opportunity, again, to use the sport to facilitate this process.
For those who have never heard of the E1 World Series, can you just, we had a chat just a few days ago, but can you just highlight really how the race format, what a race weekend in inverted commas would look like to anybody who goes along or wants to tune in?
Absolutely. So first of all, the starting point is the powerboat that is based on a foiler, and it's going to be full electric. So after the launch here in Monaco, we have done some iteration of the concept, which we will show to the world in June with a showboat. And this will happen on the 8th of June. That is the World Ocean Day again. This is something that is coming from the UN. And then we will go testing. In terms of championship, we have two categories of racing. We'll have 5 races in classic hosting ports. Monaco is already one of them. We are targeting 10 races. And so we will go in cities like London, Barcelona, and we are talking with so many cities interested in having this city event happening in their area. I mean, all the conversation are super excited, and I'm sure we will provide an incredible show. Other 5 races will be together with Extreme E. So we will have a set of powerboats on the Santa Elena, that is the big ship of 100 plus meters that is going around the world. And we are targeting to race in Greenland and then going west to New York, Miami, going down to Brazil, and then Middle East. So very dynamic, chasing scenarios, incredible scenarios like Greenland and Amazon. In the meantime, also, we want to be in the heart of the city, starting in the end of 2022, and hopefully leveraging the wheel of restarting and going back to a normal life after this very challenging month that we are all experiencing.
Yeah, very challenging indeed. What I really liked when I was talking to you the other day about this is that the way it's going to run at the moment is a sort of a knockout format. So it's a 40-minute event, essentially, when it comes to the competition. So for people who like to jump in and jump out of sport, it's perfect because it's bite-sized, and yet it's going to be extremely explosive. Paolo, you talked about the circuit when it became, when it went from your mind to actually becoming a physical thing, about future-proofing it really, and it becoming ready for electric electric forms of racing, particularly the idea that Rob has with the electro heads. Is this something that is the only way to go now when you're coming up with a new idea, how to future-proof it?
No, we have a project with the Portuguese government, and we believe that the future will not only depend on electric cars. So we believe, or I believe, that there will be several ways of moving forward. I think synthetic fuels will be one of the ways forward, especially in competition. Also, I believe that hydrogen will have a strong place in some other forms of competition or other ways of transportation. And again, electrification will be one of the ways forward. So in between of these 3 processes in the future, we will have the combination that will together be the conjunction of all the ways that we'll have forward. But obviously, a big chunk of it will be electric, no doubt about it, being by the traditional battery way, being by hydrogen fuel cells. This will be a big part of it. But again, I think that combustion engines will still be one of the strongest ways of competition that will be a part of our way of life for the future, but in a very different way, namely with synthetic fuels. I think this will be, again, the next step for traditional engines to be able to compete in the future.
Yeah, and Rob, there was an article released recently from Paddy Lowe that was saying he still believes that synthetic way is going to be an option to still use the current combustion engines that we've got. When it comes to someone like you, who we know is steeped in history when it comes to the combustion engine and motorsport, how's perception been from you moving into electric formula? Is this something, or electric series with the karting? Has it been something that has been widely embraced, or are people just trying to work out where it fits?
I think a bit of both, to be honest, Brian. I mean, we've got to remember what the targets of this karting, what will become an eventual global karting series are. It's about affordability. It's about accessibility. It's about parity. It's about meritocracy. It's about diversity. It's about inclusion. It's not particularly about propulsion methods. Propulsion methods at the minute, and I entirely agree with what Roddy says, about sustainability. That's a really, really important message, especially for the younger generation. So we don't want to be out there, with something that isn't aligned to a really clear, sustainable message. But if you think about what the core values and the core objectives are of what we're trying to do, it's about trying to bring an accessible, affordable series, where we can field machinery which is all identical to all intents and purposes. So the only differentiator is the driver talent. And right now, electrification offers us the best route of being able to do that. It's the most readily available. In the future, would we go back to probably a little bit more electronic control, with a combustion engine, but with renewable fuels, as a way of doing it, or even a hybrid version of that, to be a little bit more like Formula One at the pinnacle of the sport, or even a hydrogen fuel cell. Yes, of course, because our principal objectives are to bring this affordable series to a much wider market of young people than what karting currently does.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all works itself out over the few years. But we've got 3 unique projects here. It's a real shame that we are such a short window of time, because only a half-an-hour panel chat, and we could really talk to you probably each individually for 40 minutes and still not run out of questions. But I've got a question come in from James, who says, would the panel have any insight to share for entrepreneurs looking to secure partnerships or funding for their ideas, given their experience as innovators in each of your areas? So bearing in mind we don't have a huge amount of time left, Paolo, have you got any words of advice to anybody who has a great project and they want to get funding or support along the way, and how it reflects back on you?
Well, I would say that getting funding is probably the most difficult thing in whatever project when you're starting. So my advice would be never to give up, to have a very, very well structured project when you're asking for funding, and to open all possibilities, never to just go to the bank or to equity fund or whatever. So trying to keep all options open. I think that is probably the way forward. Never to give up, and to keep all options open. I think this would be my best advice when you're starting, when you're having a startup or whatever. I think this is the key, and trying to keep the cost as low as possible. I think also that's very important when you're starting.
For someone like Paolo, who's got this project where bringing a circuit to Portugal, a country, a big country that needed a circuit really to host Formula One and World Superbikes, etc. Roddy, your angle is powerboats. Well, people know powerboats. It's a real niche, but people know powerboats. But you're trying to bring a whole new idea to the sport, aren't you?
Yeah, as I briefly mentioned earlier, it is really about the blend of fragmented sports. We want to take the best out of the mid-range motorsport with all the technology and the approach that I have learned in more than 20 years. And I have to say, I'm incredibly pleased to be very close to announce the first team, probably in the next few weeks, and this team will come from Motorsport. So for me, this is an achievement. It means that the message has been delivered and the spirit is there. Then sailing, I mention it for my passion, but also by a technical standpoint, for the adoption of the foil naval architecture, which in a certain speed window is the most efficient way to use an electric propulsion. So this is why we want to go in that direction. And of course, Motonautic. We are part of the UIM, which is the federation, is the equivalent of FIA for Motonautic races. And we will inherit the some part of that cultural approach and technical aspects. But if you look at the landscape, these three sports are, as I say, quite fragmented, and there are fans that are a bit disoriented, maybe like in many sports. By blending, making the blend, and getting the best out of the three elements, we reckon we could do something special.
So using those three elements, you can broaden the appeal almost and capture more of an audience. Rob, I'm really sorry, looking at the time, we are running so low on this one, but I was having a look at the Electroheads Motorsport website, and it's really nice because you have the opportunity for people to buy vouchers to give it a try. Very briefly, can you just talk us through that and how people can get involved if they want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm useless with stuff like this, so I can't even remember the name of the website. But
I've got that. Don't worry.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make it. I mean, what my message to the team was, we've got to have a range of products that suits absolutely everybody in the market. So we've got a lot of people who are coming to us who are saying, I've done, a day at team sport, or I've never been sat in a kart, or whatever it is. How do I get from there to be able to race in your championship? So we've laid on products which are coming, a day of training. We've aligned that with what Motorsport UK are doing to be part of their karting pathway. So we've kind of got what's called a Kart X license, so that people can come in, they can book it on the website, they can have a day, and then by the end of 1 or 2 days of intensive training, and we're going to be doing these around the country, then you're ready to come and race in the championship. It's got to be safety first. It's got to be, it's going to be a lot of fun for the young people, but there's got to be an educational aspect and a safety aspect to it as well, so we can bring them on to the point where they're ready to get involved and race.
Yeah, look, gents, thank you so much for your time. It's a shame we've had to cut it so short, but really it's fascinating to see the three different projects, and I'll give the websites and things like that so people can check it all out. But first of all, thank you very much to Paolo, thanks to Roddy, and thanks to Rob for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
So if you'd like to find out more about those three different projects and concepts, well, first of all, autodromaalgarve.com, that's to do with the circuit in Portugal, of course. Then we go to Roddy Basso, the CEO and co-founder of the E1 World Electric Powerboat Series. Have a look at that website as well, e1series.com. It is absolutely phenomenal. I cannot wait for that to be on our screens, hopefully in 2022. And as Roddy was saying, keep your eyes open, because on the 8th of June, they'll be revealing one of those boats on World Oceans Day. So it is worth checking out, once again, e1series.com.